start from the beginning here. This week we're going to continue to talk about the subject matter titled, Don't Throw It All Away Because of a Bad Season. And when we first started out, we started in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1. And today we won't deal with that verse, but we're going to talk about Texas weather is comparable to the seasonal life of a Christian. All 4 seasons at once. And as I was saying, Texas weather is unpredictable. We understand that we have cold fronts. Our winter consists of maybe cold fronts. Then it's back 80 degrees. Then it's another cold front that lasts for 3 days. Then we have another one that lasts for a week. We know it's just unpredictable. But a lot of times you can honestly say that Texas weather, we have all 4 seasons in a week or a month. All right. So now I want to show you that in retrospect to Job's life, all right? So those of you that have your Bibles, if we could turn to Job chapter 1, verses 13 through 15, we'll start there. And I call verses 13 through 15 the winter season of Job's life. All right? Job chapter 1, verses 13 through 15. Maybe you can relate your life to some of the things that are going on in Job's life. All right? Because honestly, nothing that goes on in our lives today has already happened in the Bible. It's already captured. So we're not experiencing anything new. All right? So Job chapter 1, verses 13 through 15. And it reads, And there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the eldest brother's house. And there came a messenger unto Job and said, The oxen were plowing, and the asses feeding beside them. And the Sabeans fell upon them, and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And I only am escaped, only to tell thee. So we see in the winter season of Job's life that his asses, or his donkeys, and his oxen were taken. All right. We also see that some of his servants were also killed by the sword. All right. So now think about it. We may have a season where we lost some relatives, lost a loved one, lost a friend, so that's equivalent to him losing his servants. Maybe someone stole something from you, all right, that's equivalent to him losing his donkeys and his oxen, so hopefully you can relate to that. But that's just the winter season, all right, but there are more seasons to come in Job's life, all right. So now, let's drop down to verse 16, and we're going to talk about the spring season. Now remember, I'm trying to paint you a picture that Job's life is just like Texas weather. And a Christian's life is just equivalent to the same because we go through many seasons at one time. All right? Now, think about it. When we pick up on verse 16, remember what happened in verses 13 through 15. And then another servant comes and tells Job something else or some more bad news. So we'll pick up there. Job chapter 1, verse 16. We call this the spring season. And it says, While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, The fire of God is fallen from heaven. I love the way you put that. It says, And have burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. So we see the spring season of Job's life, right? We see that he lost some sheep and he also lost some more servants, all right? So all this is going on at one time. The sheep, the donkey, the asses, and 2 bundles of servants. We'll call it that way, all right? So all this is going on, is multiple seasons occurring at one time. Can you relate? All right. Now, let's drop down. I call this the summer season. Job chapter 1, verse 17. All right. The summer season. And keep in mind, this is still occurring while all of the other stuff was occurring also. All right. And it says, While he was yet speaking, all right, there also came another and said, The Chaldeans made out 3 bands and fell upon the camels. So now we have his camels are gone. All right. This is how to carry them away. Yea, and slain. So we now have some more servants that were slain with the edge of the sword. And only am escaped alone to tell thee. That's the summer season. Now, the fall and autumn season, it gets a little worse for Job, okay? So stay with me. And we're going to capture that in verses 18 and 19. All right? So it says here, While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, Thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And behold, there came a great wind. I'm spitting bubbles. A great wind from the wilderness and smote the 4 corners of the house. And it fell upon the young men, and they are dead. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. So all of these seasons were occurring in Job's life. He lost his sheep. He lost his oxen. He lost his camels. He lost his servants. Not only did he lose that, but he also lost his children. You know, Job, in a sense, he was a priest because he offered sacrifices for his family, in a sense. So he kind of played the role of priest. But if you really study the chapter of Job, you'll understand that Job feared this. He feared this. He feared that something could happen. He said, the thing that I feared most has come upon me. All right? So what I try to tell people is fear. When you fear, you invite certain things into your life.
Absolutely.
Now, a lot of people think, well, God gave Satan permission to touch him. You must really understand that Job broke his hedge of protection, and maybe we'll get into that next week. So, believers, that's one of the reasons we bring unwanted seasons into our lives, because we break our hedge of protection out by our mouths. By our mouths, simply by our mouths, because what the Bible says that power and death lies in the power of the tongue. And I always tell people, you must understand that when you're speaking, when you're just saying words, some people think, oh, I'm just talking. They don't really understand the power of words. They don't really understand the authority of words. They don't understand that their words go before them and they plots their future. See, a lot of people don't understand that, so they think that they're just talking. But by your talk, you break your hedge of protection. And at that point, when you break your hedge of protection, anything can befall you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're still there. So I wish we could really get more into that. But that's kind of what happened with Job. And if you really look at it, Satan knew that God put a hedge of protection around Job. He says, hadn't you put a hedge? Everything that he owns, I cannot touch it. There's nothing that I can do to him. He says, well, touch him now. He says, you cannot touch him. He says, but touch everything around him.
Yes.
You cannot touch him. He says, but touch everything around him. Why did he say that? Because at that point he was saying, Job is not still going to serve me. All right? And also he proved God right because Job still served him. All right? But I just thought I'd throw that in there for free.
That's good. Now,
let's go on. Let me reiterate what we just went over. We witnessed that Job experienced many seasons at once. His livestock, his servants, his children. Relationship with his wife kind of was rocky. And if you read all of Job. And then he also surfaced with boils. So those were other seasons. But Job had many or multiple seasons at one time. And I think we can all relate to that. And I said that a Christian's life is equivalent to Texas weather. Because we can have many different seasons at one time. Or in a matter of weeks, time span, just as Job did. I think we can all relate to that because of our weather pattern. All right? Now, even though, right, we experience these seasons, it's hot and humid. Like now, you really don't want to go out during the daytime, all right? So it's hot and it's humid, all right? And I said our winters consist of like multiple cold fronts, all right? So it's really not a winter, all right? Spring is kind of fair, some beautiful days and some ugly days. Fall, sometimes the weather is okay, but most of the time it's not. So those are different seasons. But remember, they're just seasons. Now, if we can actually say, I'm glad when summer is over, why don't we have the same mentality for the seasons of our lives? Because it's just a season. Just as summer is a season. Just as winter is a season. Something that we're temporarily experiencing. We experience temporary seasons in our lives. So why don't we have the same mentality that one day it'll be over? Just a question.
Whoa.
Only a question that you can answer.
It's good.
So, I'll move on. Now, make sure I'm not taking you too fast here. Let's talk about seasons will come, and that's why the short-term memory syndrome is necessary in the life of a believer. Let me explain to you what I mean. We all watch sports, right? And football on Sundays, I guess. I don't make it to church or whatever the case may be. Right now, every church seems like it's canceled, but there's another day's story.
Yeah.
But think about the quarterback. When the quarterback is out on the field, right, and he makes a mistake. Let's say he throws an interception, or let's say a pick six. Let's make it a little drastic. A pick six, for those that might not know, is a quarterback throws an interception. The other team catches it, right, and it runs it back for a touchdown, right? So they score off that interception. So that's a pick six. All right, he took it all the way to the house, we would say. All right, now think about it here. That quarterback has to have short memory syndrome. He cannot remember the last play. He cannot stay stuck in the last play of the last season. He has to go out there and lead his team to victory, or whatever the case may be. He has to be the leader for his team. So he has to have the short memory syndrome.
Whoa.
That's the same way that a believer must. Even though you experience a season, you must have the short memory syndrome. You must diagnose yourself with it. All right? In this case, you don't want to diagnose yourself with anything, but in this case, you want to diagnose yourself with the short memory syndrome. That's the only way you'll be able to move from season to season. Why? Because if not, you'll stay looking back in the rear view. We'll get to that in a minute. But a quarterback must have the short memory syndrome. Why? Because everybody's dependent on that quarterback. But why? He's the leader of the team. He may be the face of the franchise, but everybody has put their faith in a quarterback to lead them to victory. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, maybe somebody has faith in you to lead them to victory. Have you ever thought about that? But you must have the short memory syndrome. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Now, think about it here. Our seasons, we only want to relate with our seasons that we go through in a sense to take away knowledge, to take away understanding, and to take away wisdom from that season. But we don't want to stay stuck in the season. Now, I say forget the season, but you never really can forget your season or your experience. Let me explain it to you like this. If someone did some harm to you or caused you some type of pain, we often say, well, you must extend forgiveness. Why? Because once we extend forgiveness, it no longer holds us hostage. All right? So it no longer holds us hostage or in bondage about that situation. Now, just because we extended forgiveness doesn't mean that we have forgotten what has happened to us or that experience. All right? Now, I say that to say this. Even though we go through a season, you will never forget your experience or that season, but you have to forget it in a way that allows you to move forward. That's why I say you only relate with it. You take the wisdom from the season. You take the understanding and the knowledge from that season. But from that, you leave it alone and you move on. Well, I say again, you'll never forget the season that you experienced. But you don't want that season to hold you captive or in bondage, that when you can't move forward into the next season. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. See, a lot of people think, well, when you forgive, that you'll forget. That's not necessarily true because that's your experience.
They're two different things, yeah.
Are you with me? See, we're like God in a lot of ways. Are you with me? But in some ways we differ. What do I mean? When God forgives, he catches spiritual amnesia. He cannot remember it no more because that's what his word says. Mm-hmm. See, man remembers your history. But God has no recollection of it. Why? Because of what his son did. I always tell people he cannot see past the blood of his son. So he forgives. When he forgives, he forgets. But as a human nature, we hold on, or we not hold on, but we remember our past experiences. Just because you remember the past experiences don't mean that you haven't wholeheartedly forgiven. How do you know if you have forgiven? When you're no longer held in bondage by that situation or that person. You'll know that you're wholeheartedly forgiven. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Does that make okay?
Very good.
So you must have the short memory syndrome. All right? All right. Now, let's talk about there's no need to look behind. Philippians chapter 3, verse 13. I don't know if you studied along these lines before. Maybe
I've never looked at it this way.
Or something. There's no need to look behind. Philippians chapter 3, verse 13. All right, here. It says, brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, meaning I haven't taken a hold, all right? I think the Greek word there is katalabano, Katalambano, I believe. It means to take a hold of it, to seize, to possess, all right? To receive. I always tell a lot of Christians, you must take a hold of it, right? Like healing is already there. You must receive it. Take a hold of it. Why? Because it's rightfully yours. Because you're a child. You're a seed of Abraham. All right? You take a hold of it. You make it yours. You possess it. All right? So that means to take a hold of it. Now, if you really look here, let me come back to that. Let me finish reading it here. I don't want to take it too fast. It says, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth unto those things which are before. He says, I'm letting those things behind. Think about it here. Compare this to running a race, a runner. Have you ever been to a track meeting? You see the runners run, or we watch it on TV when the Olympics come around. Think about how disciplined that runner is.
Oh, yeah.
They're not looking behind them. they're not getting out of their lane because they'll be disqualified. But they're only looking to obtain the prize. And that is Paul trying to give us that understanding when we're running this race. When we're running this race with Jesus, of course we're going to have seasons. But he says you must keep your eyes on the prize. You must not look back at what happened behind you. Because when you look back, what if a runner is looking back? He may trip in the other lane or anything can happen. But he must keep his eyes on the future, what's ahead of him. All right, that's why I say we must, looking behind, it does us no good. It does us no justice. Think about it. I'm a fan of LeBron James, and I just try to make this make sense. I'm a big fan of, my wife says I have a man crush. I probably shouldn't have said that. But I'm a fan of him, all right, in a lot of ways. But the truth of the matter is, he's known for chasing down people, blocking shots from behind. Now, I've caught some players when I was watching certain games. They see him coming, and they're kind of stir stuff, and they're looking for behind. Well, what happens? They take their eye off what they're trying to accomplish or moving forward or their future or their new season, all right, to put their eyes on the past season or what's behind them. Ooh. You can't do that, all right? So that's what Paul's saying. He says you must keep your eyes. You must reach to the things that are before you. Reach to the season that's before you. He said, I understand you in the season. Think about it. Once a runner passes another runner, that runner becomes behind him. That's an old season. Can you see that? Think about it. When you're driving in a car, right, we have the rear view mirror, and then we have the windshield. Think about it. That rear view mirror is what's behind you. See, it's only allowed to be a little piece of your life. But that windshield, when you're going forward, that is allowed to be a big part of your life. Mm-hmm. You don't drive backwards looking up. No.
No.
And that's what we must do. Paul says there's no need of looking behind. There's no need of looking to your past season. All right? But he says you must look to the season before you. Or you're still there. All right. Now think about this here. I want to read this to you. You cannot move forward while stuck in your past at the same time. It just doesn't mix. No, you cannot move forward while stuck in the past or your past at the same time. You have to do one or the other. Now the choice is yours. All right? Does that make sense?
Oh, too much.
All right, so you cannot look behind. Let's go to a biblical example. All right? Genesis chapter 19, verse 17. Genesis chapter 19, verse 17. And we know this is the story of Lot, all right, when Sodom and Gomorrah was about to be destroyed, all right? And we can talk so much about this, there's so much went on, but I'll read it here. And it came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, escape for thy life. Look not what behind thee. He says, neither stay thou in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. So, in other words, Lot and his family was in a season consumed and engulfed by sin. They were engulfed by sin. They were consumed by sin. We know men were with men and all vice versa. They tried to be with the angels, just everything. All right, and he volunteered. He said, no, not them, but I'll give my daughter to you. Mm-hmm. So they were engulfed by sin. All right, and that's the type of life they were living in. And a lot of people will say, well, God knew they were going to do it, just like Adam. He knew Adam was going to sin. Well, why didn't he judge him before then? Because he had to let the cup run. He had to let the cup become full before he can judge. All right, it's just like now. All right, a lot of people think, and I said last week, a lot of people think he's judging now, but he's not judging now. That has nothing to do with God. I always say it's the responsibility. Why everything is occurring right now? Because of an insubordinate church. Because we have not carried out our responsibility. Yes. But that's another day's story. All right? But he could not judge them. Just like he can't judge, he had to wait till all the things heap up, all right? Till the cup is full. And that's just like at the end time. Guess what? The cup is going to be full. And he can bring his judgment. Or you're still there. But two things I want you to get here. God will always encourage you to move forward. But you must make the decision to do so. I say again, God will always encourage you to move forward, but you must make the decision to do so. All right. Now, I also want you to get a bad season in life has the ability to consume one if they keep looking back into it. I say again, a bad season in life has the ability to consume one if they keep looking back into that season. Or you're still there.
Ooh, very easy.
Now, let's go to Genesis 19, verse 26. Those on your electronic Bibles, just scroll down. Those on your pages, no, maybe on the same page. It's been a long time since I read one of those. I've gotten quite lazy, I guess. Genesis 19, verse 26. And I want you to get some points, and I'll read them to you after I read it. Here. It says, but his wife, looked what? Back from behind him. And she became a pillar of salt. This is what I want you to get. And looking back, Lot's wife was pulling back the curtain, so to speak, to take one last glance into her past or old season. I say again, and looking back, Lot's wife was pulling back the curtain, so to speak, to take one last glance into her past or her old season. All right? Now, I want you to get that God is against this type of behavior, because looking back can cause one to become a statue in a season. Does a statue move? No, it stays right there planted until one moves. So you become a statue in the season that you're in. All right? Now think about it. Just imagine Apostle Paul, who we were talking about earlier. He says, not looking back. Think of all the seasons that he endured, all the persecution, everything. Even when he was converted, people still didn't want to fool with him, but he still preached the gospel. But just think, he was beaten, he was in prison, everything was stuck. Just everything happened to him, all these seasons. But he says, I choose not to look what's behind, but I'm straining what's before me. All right, and that's the mentality we must have. And I just said, just think about it. Just think about it. If Paul didn't have that mentality, then we may not never know about it. I'm not going to say that we wouldn't see most of the New Testament, but he was responsible for that. But just think about it. If he was still stuck in a season looking behind him, how could he ever go forward? How could he write 3/4 or whatever the New Testament? How could he be, to me, considered the greatest apostle of all time to me? But that's just my opinion. But how could he be that? All right? Just think about it. Now, I also want you to get, some people become comfortable in a bad season, and they have a hard time letting it go, just as a season has a hard time letting it go. All right? And think about it here. Like sometimes we become comfortable in, my grandma calls it, your own mess.
Yes.
All right?
It's
now,
true.
you can think of a baby, right? If a baby has a nasty diaper, I'll put it that way, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes they become comfortable in that because that's what they get used to.
exactly.
All right? That's the same way grown-ups are. Same way some Christians are.
It's true.
You become comfortable in your own mess. You become comfortable in your way of life, the ways you act, the way that you do things. All right? And that's just the same way, like, we become comfortable in that same season when we become comfortable with ourselves in a bad situation. All right? Now, what is the problem with that? When we become comfortable in our own mess, it makes that season turn into a way of life when it should have just been a season, something that you experienced. You turn it into a permanent situation when it should have just been a season, something that you experienced, something that you've gone through in a long way, but it becomes a way of life. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, I'll go on. I don't want you to fall asleep on me now. I want you to get this also. All right. Lot's wife was consumed or overtaken by the previous season, and she forfeited her opportunity to enter into a new season. Can you see that in that verse?
Mm-hmm.
Now, think about it. When a team doesn't win a game to get into the playoffs, really, in a way, they have forfeited their opportunity to enter into a new season. Because we often say, no matter what a team record is, that's just that season. But when the playoffs begin, it's a new season.
It is, yes.
Right? So she forfeited her opportunity to enter into that new season. All right? Okay. Now, let's talk about journeying from the season of drought to the season of prosperity.
All right, let's turn to Genesis chapter 30, and we'll start off with verses 25 through 30. I'm going to be talking about Jacob and Laban. And I'm going to read from the Amplified here. Genesis chapter 30, verses 25 through 30. All right, journeying from the season of drought to the season of prosperity. All right, I'll pick up my reading. It says, now when Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away, that I may go back to my own place and to my own country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go. Now, think about it. What does that tell me? That tells me that Jacob had a new season in his heart. He was already looking forward to a new season. He understood the season that he was in. And that's why I say, understand the season that you're in, but always look forward to a new season. How do I know he had a new season in his heart? Because by his talk. Simply by his communication.
Very easy, yes.
Are you still there?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, I'll go on. He says, which is the work I have done for you. He says, but Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your sight, stay with me. Or I have learned. Oh, yeah, this is beautiful, but he got his information from the wrong source. You'll see here. It says, for I have learned from the omens and divination and by experience, that the Lord has blessed me because of you. See, somebody else could be blessed because of you. See, all the time, you don't necessarily reap the benefits of it. The other person does. But why? It's a direct connection to you. Never forget that. Sometimes you may not reap the benefits. Okay, let's say for a husband and a wife, all right? You may be doing certain things, but you may not necessarily reap the benefits. Your wife, or vice versa, may reap the benefits, all right? Because of you. So I sit there and say, sometimes people are blessed because of you and your effort or what you're doing. Never forget that, all right? So, now he says, but he received his information from the wrong source, right? Because he sent us prophets, apostles, things of that to receive our information from. That's why some people were even killed when they were dealing with the sorcerers and stuff in the Old Testament. Because, yes, they can give you the correct information. That is true. Even all these psychics, and I think we mentioned that before, but you're getting your information from the wrong source. Or you're still there. All right. Now, okay. He said, name your wages, and I will give it to you. Jacob answered him, you know how I have served you, and how your possessions, your cattle and sheep and goats have fared with me. Now look at this. He says, well, you had little before I came, and it has increased and multiplied abundantly. And wherever I turn, and he says, but now when shall I provide for my own household? So he still has a new season in mind. But if you also notice something, notice that Laban, he was living in lack. He had a season of lack. Jacob told him, he says, before I came, you didn't have many. But because the spirit of increase is upon me, you have benefited from it.
Oh.
Can you see that? So he experienced a season of lack too, but he also experienced a season of increase. So his season of lack was just a season, but he also experienced a season of increase. All right? So a season is just a season. All right? Are you still there?
Yeah.
All right. Now, one thing I want you to get. His season didn't make him bitter as it does to some, but it simply made him determined to enter a new one. And that's the mentality that we must have. And I say it again. Jacob's season didn't make him bitter as some seasons do to some people, but it simply made him determined to enter a new one. Are you still there? All right. Now let's read verses 31 to 34. All right. Now, it reads, Laban asked, what shall I give you? Jacob replied, you shall not give me anything. But if you will do this one thing for me, which I now propose, I will again pasture and keep your flock. He says, let me pass through your entire flock today, removing from it speckled and spotted sheep, and every dark or black one among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. And those shall be my wages. Now, you must understand, revelation is starting to come to him. when he starts talking about the speckled sheep and this and that, a revelation is starting to come to him. That revelation is going to serve him a great purpose. We'll get to that in a minute. Just keep that in mind. He says, so my honesty will be evident for me later. He says, when you come for an accounting concerning my wages, he says, everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and dark among the young lambs, if found with me, shall be considered stolen. And Laban said, good, let it be done as you say. These are the things I want you to get from this. Jacob didn't focus on his seasons of lack, but he focused on the strategy or revelation that God gave him for his new season. It was strategy. With the sheep, with the speckle, it was strategy. All right? It was revelation for God. All right? Now, the strategy of revelation was a supernatural transportation that would take Jacob from the land of lack to the land of prosperity. I say again, the strategy of revelation was a supernatural transportation that would take Jacob from the land of lack to the land of prosperity. All right? Most of all, God will give you a revelation about your new season and a strategy of a revelation that, if carried out, will cause your new season to prosper. We must understand, people, that revelation is the beginning of change. Whenever you need change in your life, you need revelation. You don't need anything else, but you need revelation. He told me that some years ago concerning my son. He said, son, revelation is the beginning of change. Why? Because revelation is meant to be put to work. It's meant to be acted upon.
That's it, yeah.
You're supposed to do something with it. Sometimes revelation is something for you to teach. But a lot of times when you're trying to correct situations in your life or things in your life, or you got troubles in your life or whatever, revelation is given you because it is the beginning of change. Without revelation, you can't change anything. With revelation, you can change anything on the face of the earth. All right? Am I making sense?
Oh, yeah.
We might even finish early today. Wow. Maybe good we did start over. All right, we're still going to talk about Joseph some more. All right? I want you to see this. Now let's start with verse 35 through 43. All right, and we'll end it there. Well, not end it there, but we'll end it with Jacob right there. All right, verses 35 through 43. Now, it says, so on that same day, Laban secretly removed the male goats that were streaked and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one with white on it, and all the dark ones among the sheep, and put them in the care of his sons. And he put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob was left in care of the rest of Laban's flock. Now, remember, the revelation, the strategy about the speckled sheep and all that, he says, I want these. Now, he takes them out. What does that represent? That shows you that Satan is always behind closed doors or working behind the scene.
Always.
To sabotage your new season or to stop you from entering into your new season. Why? Because simply Laban was in the stead of Satan. He's working behind the scenes. He's deceiving. All right? Can you see that? Let me go on here. So, think about it. It's always a hindrance, even when you're being elevated spiritually. Sometimes as you're elevating, it seems also that you're descending, but you're elevated.
Oh, wow.
But Satan is always trying to stop you from going to the next level. It's always. That's his job. That's what one of the things that he does. But he always wants to keep you hostage in a certain season. He never wants you to ascend to another season or move forward into another season of your life. He always wants to block it. All right? So, where was I?
That was good.
Okay. Give me 1 second here. Okay. Then Jacob took the branches. This is a revelation. Remember, the revelation started. Now he's putting the revelation into action. All right? So you must put the revelation into action because it has to bring you change. You say, well, what if it doesn't work? No, you shouldn't think that way. Only thing you should think about, what if it does? As he always said, and you heard me say it before, faith never thinks of the process, but it only focuses on the results.
That's right.
It doesn't think about the process.
Exactly.
Why? Because if you begin to think about the process, It'll be a hindrance.
That's where people get it wrong, yeah.
Faith just reacts. It reacts. It responds. And I always say that faith is a response of the human
Yes.
spirit to the Word of God.
Yes.
The Word of God says something and you respond. You do it. You don't think about it. Faith has no emotions. It has no thoughts. It doesn't think.
That's right.
It just responds. It's like in a sense that it's involuntary. It
Yes.
sees the Word and it responds.
You either have it or you don't.
Just like our system, it responds. I think what you can put your leg some kind of way and you can hit it and it just kicks out
Yeah.
right. It's involuntary.
Natural
It just
response.
responds. That's a good definition of faith. It just responds.
Yes.
It doesn't think of the process. All right. So anytime you get revelation, put it to work. Put it to work. Doesn't mean you might not see a result the next day or the next day, but put it to work. It has to work. It has to, because it's the beginning of change. It can affect change. All right. All right. I'm talking too much.
That's true.
Now, it says, then Jacob took the branches of a fresh poplar, or maybe I'm saying it right, almond and plane trees, and peeled with white stripes in them, exposing the white in the branches. Then he set the branches which he had peeled in front of the flocks and the watering troughs. It says, where the flocks came to drink. And they mated and conceived when they came to drink. So the flocks mated and conceived by the branches, and the flocks gave birth to streaked, speckled, and spotted offspring. Can you see that? Jacob separated the lambs, and as he had done with the peeled branches, he made the flocks face toward the street, and all the other dark or black in the new flock of Laban. And he put his own herds apart by themselves, and did not put them where they could be bred. He says, with Laban's flock. Furthermore, whenever the strong animals of the flocks were breeding, Jacob would place the branches in the sight of the flock in the watering troughs, so that they would mate and conceive among the branches. But when the flock was sickly, he did not put the branches there. So the sicker animals were Laban's, and the strongest became who? Jacob. So Jacob became, look at this now, Jacob became exceedingly what? Prosperous, and had large flocks of sheep and goats, and female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. Can you see that? Now, some things I want you to get, I just want to reiterate. Satan is always working behind the scenes to sabotage the season that you are about to enter. It doesn't matter what Satan's plan is, because revelation that God has given you has the authority, the power to supersede his plan of failure. And that's why I say revelation is the beginning of change. He had to put the revelation to work. All right. And what happened? He went from a season of drought or a season of lack to a season of prosperity. But he didn't stay stuck. He wasn't mad, and as I said before, he wasn't bitter about his season. Why? Because he had a new season in mind. My question to you, do you have a new season in mind? Or are you still stuck in your season? Are you going to be consumed by your season? Are you going to turn into a pillar of salt? What are you going to do? But I tell you that you should choose to move forward and enter into your new season. Or you're still there.
Yeah.
Now we can see that Jacob traveled from the land of lack to the land of prosperity. How? By revelation. Remember, revelation is a supernatural transportation that took him from poverty or lack to a surplus. All right? Or you're still there. 7:48. Uh-oh. Okay, stay with me here. We're going to finish up here. Now, let's talk about never allow your seasonal experience to produce a moment of paralysis. Never allow your seasonal experience to produce a moment of paralysis. Let's turn to Acts chapter 5, verse 17 through 22. And we're going to read from the Amplified. And this will be our last part for the day.
What?
Acts chapter 5, verses 17 through 22. Maybe I need to get a little more proper. Are you still there? Don't fall asleep on me now. But does it make sense so far?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'm going to come
Very
back to
well.
some more. Yeah. Acts chapter 5, verses 17 through 22. I'm going to read from the Amplified. I know I said that 100 times already. It says, but the high priest, now this is, when they were preaching the gospel, they were getting locked up and everything, they were being persecuted. The apostles went through a lot of different things. All right, if you really think about it, sometimes they were shut up in certain places. Why? Fear of the Jews, fear of other people, maybe fear of the Sanhedrin, maybe fear of the Pharisees, and all that type of stuff. But fear can get a hold of you, all right? And I've said that before, but just to give you a little background here. It says, but the high priest stood up along with all his associates, that is, the sect of the Sadducees, and they were filled with jealousy and resentment. They arrested the apostles and put them in public jail. But during the night, an angel of the Lord, I love it, opened the prison doors. And leading them out, he said, look what he says, go stand and continue to tell the people in the temple or the courtyards. He says the whole message of this life. What life? The eternal life revealed by Christ and found through faith in him. He says, when they heard this, they went into the temple courtyards about daybreak and began teaching. Why? Why would the angel of the Lord tell them this? Go preach. They told you not to preach, but he says go preach. Why? Because he knows that our past experiences can breed fear. It can paralyze us by the emotion of fear. And he didn't want that. Why? Because they had a duty to do. And that's how the gospel got to us. They transferred it. They transferred it to someone else. They transferred it. They transferred it. They transferred it. And it came to West Columbia, to Elisio. No, I'm just joking. But it came to us, right? But it transferred. So it had to start somewhere. But they had a very important job to do. All right? Now, a lot of people always say that experiences is your best teacher. I used to agree with that. But I don't really agree with that statement anymore. Why? Because your experiences have ability to paralyze you. Think about it here.
They do.
If you, okay, we just had I hate to bring that, we just had a lady, a celebrity that drowned, right, here recently. Now, I think she may have gone to the water a lot. But think about it, if something had happened before this, right, that made her fear the water by her experience. Maybe if she almost had drowned before, that experience can cause her to be fearful. So it kind of paralyzes you. So I don't think always experience is the best teacher all the time, because sometimes, not in every case, but sometimes it can paralyze an individual where they never can try that again. And then you start missing out on life and things of that nature. So that's why I say your experiences or your seasons sometimes can paralyze you. That's why it's very important that we must move to a new season.
It's like PTSD.
Right? Yeah.
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oops.
Now, and I'll read this, what I just said. We have always been taught that the philosophy of experience is the best teacher, when in most cases it paralyzes a person in a way that keeps them in bondage when it comes to trying that very thing again.
That's right.
That's what it does. Not in every case, but that's what it does. And I think I told you guys, we're in the Dominican Republic, and I call myself snorkeling, right? Now, I don't claim to be a Michael Phelps or anyone, but, I can't swim. So, but what happened to me, and I was out on the boat, out in the water, and I was trying to get my stuff together. I thought I was anyway, but then the waves kept hitting me, and I panicked.
Exactly.
I panicked. But I swam back to the boat. But what am I saying this for? When we went to Jamaica, I was jumping off a high cliff.
Oh, yeah.
Still. But what I'm saying, I couldn't allow that experience to determine my future.
Exactly.
All right? And that's what happens
Because it could,
to some people.
yeah.
And I think water is a very dangerous thing. I
Me
don't
too.
care how good of a swimmer you are.
Exactly.
You have to respect it. And I always tell people, it is a difference from being in a swimming pool versus a river or lake. Mm-hmm. That's like Mother Nature, if you want to call it. But it's a difference. All right? There's no currents in the swimming pool. All right?
Yes,
Plus,
right.
you probably have a lot more people around you in the
Yes.
swimming pool. But if I could have allowed that experience to terrify me.
Exactly.
All right? But I still respect water. Well, hopefully you got something from that, and next week we'll continue with this teaching. There's some more to deliver, so hopefully you were blessed in some kind of way. Thank you for
Always.
those that came out, coming out. God bless you, thumbs up. And I hope those that are watching, hopefully you got something from it. God bless you, and may He keep you. All right.
Want to pray?